15 minutes past the 8 o'clock hour, and Chris Lenois back with you on the Green Mountain Mornings program. Commonsnews.org is the website for your reader-supported, award-winning home for independent news and views here in Windham County. Joining us every Friday during the 8 o'clock hour, Deputy Editor Randy Holhut. Good morning to you, Randy.
Good morning, Chris. Good morning, everyone. Hi, Joyce.
Hi, Joyce. Thanks so much for tuning in. Now, one of the lead stories in this week's edition of the Commons, Wendy Levy writing about the Windham Solid Waste Management District from the point of view of the town of Guilford and some of their confusion. And there's been a lot of confusion around the issue with the Windham Solid Waste Management District, how it's funded, what people want out of their district. The vote last night, Randy, from the Board of Supervisors means some pretty significant changes for how recycling is handled in this area. Just to review what that vote was, Natalie Knowles has been reporting on it for us this morning during her regular updates. So the Board of Supervisors last night, which is the 20-member towns, everybody, well, I guess in the Vermont listening area, not in the New Hampshire listening area, the materials recovery facility on Old Ferry Road is going to close. They are going to stop hauling recyclables. They are going to keep the assessment model that's in place now, which is based on population alone. There was some talk about splitting it 50-50 between population of each of the member towns as well as the grand list. They are going to have a one-time closing cost assessment of $94,000 for that materials recovery facility. I'm just going to call it the MRF going forward here. And then at some point, they're going to have to sell off all the equipment in the MRF, but they're not going to do that. They're not going to vote on how to handle that until later. Knowing all that now and just really digesting it for the first time, I know your reaction to that vote.
Stupid. Stupid, ill-sighted, wrong.
It's a situation from where I'm sitting that seems to be Brattleboro leveraging its 6 votes and really being the major player in this. They as you, I'm sure, are aware, on Tuesday, took David Scholes out of the mix and put John Allen in, wanting to vote against this budget. And really, this whole time, wanting to see this materials recovery facility close. Now, Brattleboro, we're covered here in our community because they're going to come up with another contract. They're going to have all the recycling collected curbside still, and it's all going to go up to Rutland, apparently at a lower cost than what the management district can do. So we're okay, but what does that mean for residents in towns like yours in Dummerston?
We're screwed. That's what it means. We're responsible for disposing of our recyclables on our own. We're responsible for disposing of our trash on our own. If we haven't got arranged personally with a trash hauler to pick up our trash, we take it down to Old Ferry Road to dispose of it. We have rollover boxes, say in Dummerston at the town garage, and that's where been taking my recyclables for the last 20-some-odd years. And if that's gone, then I have to take it to Old Ferry Road, and maybe they'll haul it away up to Casella, or they may not take recyclables at all, which of course violates the recycling law they passed.
Right. Yeah, I mean, and that's the other thing is, okay, so we have the 600-pound gorilla that is Brattleboro, and then we have the 1,600-pound gorilla that's Act 148. You're not going to have a place to take these recyclables. You say we're on our own as a town like Dummerston, but how far do you have to travel to do something or something responsible, like dispose of your recycling responsibly? There's not going to be a place to do that from what I'm gathering.
And all this kind of tracks back to David Gartenstein's temper tantrum of, other people from outside Brattleboro are using the recycling bins on Fairgrounds Road.
Right. And
that's not fair.
Right. Yeah. It seemed like a small price to pay to encourage people to dispose of recyclable materials. And even though I have curbside pickup, we've had a lot of big boxes or things like that during a move. It certainly is much easier to not wait until Monday, which is our pickup day, but to take them over to Fairground Road, which is basically in our neighborhood, and dispose of some of the stuff there. It was a nice convenience. I don't know what the cost of that was necessarily, if it was too costly, but this is a situation that really it's so complicated. The story that Wendy wrote about Guilford kind of not understanding what the vote was about, threatening to withdraw from the district, it shouldn't be that difficult to figure out how to pay for disposing of our trash.
And the Windham Solid Waste District has been working, as Wendy outlined, how it works. The towns pay their assessment based on on the factors that they were in place. All the towns had the rollover boxes for recyclables that got picked up by the district, which were a major expense, but something that was part of the recycling law. And they processed it down on Old Ferry Road and sold off the materials to help fund the district. Now we know that the recycling scrap prices have gone down in the last couple of years because of the recession in China and other factors. So they're not making as much from the MRF. But the idea is the district is not a business. It's not designed to make a profit. It's designed to break even at best. It's a government entity, which means this is a service that is provided to the residents of Windham County, the towns that belong to the district. And anyone who thinks that a government entity has to be run like a business is a fool.
Yeah, we're going to get a lot of foolishness, I think, for the next 4 years based on that. Does the district itself bear some responsibility here? There's been a push to go to single stream to dispose of more recyclables, but because they're saying that numbered 3 through 7 aren't profitable, they're just separating those out, throwing them in a landfill. Part of the thing that makes me feel good about this change is the fact that everything I put in my recycling bin, those plastics 1 through 7, are actually going to get recycled. It seems to me that the district could have figured out a way to do that.
And they could have figured out a way to do that, but of course the MRF was set up before single stream recycling became feasible.
Yeah.
So they do take that extra step, but it's really not that hard. The whole point of single stream is not to make recycling more profitable. It's to make it a no-brainer for people recycling, that all they throw in their stuff into one bin. You don't have to separate paper and plastic and glass. Just throw it all in, and somebody else deals with it.
It seems to me that if we could come up with a one-time closing cost assessment of about $94,000, according to the reports, that we could have come up with some kind of one-time assessment to help the MRF convert from what it is now to single stream, right?
Yeah, you could do that, but that would make too much sense. It's easy.
Yeah,
the events of late call to mind the late House Speaker Sam Rayburn's famous quote: "Any jackass can kick down a barn, but it takes a carpenter to put one up."
And the thing that really keeps the costs high for the Windham Solid Waste Management District has to do with education. But right now, when we're in the midst of this change in how we dispose of our trash and separating out compost, separating out recycling, we need that educational component. Maybe that can go down at some point. But here, I think overall, it's really the dollars are driving this, and people aren't realizing what they're getting for their dollars, and they probably won't realize it until after it's gone. And I guess maybe...
And Bob Spencer was really clear on it, that this decision is going to mean everyone is going to be paying more for disposing of their waste, and for no really particularly good reason. Yeah. Well,
we're having Bob Spencer on next week to talk about a couple different things. Looking forward to his opinion on this. Always looking forward to talking with Randy on a Friday about things happening here in the Brattleboro area and covered by the Commons each and every week. Their issues free on stands every Wednesday online at commonsnews.org. More with Randy Holhut after the bottom of the hour news break. 28 degrees outside at 22 minutes before the 9 o'clock hour. Green Mountain Mornings continuing now with your host, Chris Lenois, and our Friday conversation with Randy Holhut, Deputy Editor of the Commons, your reader-supported, award-winning independent news and views source for Windham County. It's that time of year, Randy, when you are asking people to become members and support this paper, I'm sure.
Yes, it is, and the annual appeal letters have been going out, and people have been receiving them. But, of course, giving knows no season. No. If you love our paper, show it.
Yeah, commonsnews.org. You can get it like me, being a member. You get it mailed to you every week. That's a real nice convenience rather than driving around looking for a copy somewhere. Not that it's hard to find a copy if you get out there on a Wednesday or a Thursday. Your circulation over 11,000 now?
No, it's still in the $10,000.
Still in the 10,000. I'm pulling a Trump here.
Copy range.
I'm pulling a Trump here. I think the circulation last I heard was 15,000. You know. Just puff it up a little bit, but definitely worth checking out. Great stories about, like we were talking about, the Solid Waste Management District and confusion in Guilford about that. Story by Wendy Levy. A couple stories by Mike Fair, and we had an opportunity to speak to Mike about them on Tuesday regarding Act 46, an important vote coming up next Tuesday for the member towns of the Windham Southeast Supervisory Union to approve Vernon leaving the supervisory union, basically preserving school choice, not being a participant in the Act 46 district unification process. No reason to think that this won't happen next Tuesday, is there?
I really don't know, because this is going to be an election with a minuscule turnout.
Mm-hmm.
I would be shocked if there's more than 5% of turnout for this vote.
Yeah.
In towns. I mean, a vote on December 13th, I mean, you're really thinking about an election during this time of year.
Especially after the last election. I think people have a little bit of voter fatigue.
Yes, they do. But the town clerks in the district towns had a good point. This was a little too much to add to the pile of all the other things that they had to deal with on November 8th, so that this is how it got postponed into December. But I think it's probably going to pass, because there's no reason not to. I mean, Vernon wants to leave the district. Fine, leave.
Yeah, everybody who's paying attention, anybody who is somebody who cares about this enough to go out and vote, I think is going to say, you know what, Vernon wants to leave. Jill Stahl-Tyler, who is the school board chair here in the town of Brattleboro and a member of the Act 46 study committee, came on the show. And even though, and I had to crack up about this, how they take no official position on this, everything, I was like, you already got the articles of withdrawal drawn up. You're saying that they want to leave, so we want to respect that choice. That to me sounds like you're taking a position.
Yeah, and Vernon certainly took a position by voting to leave.
Yeah.
But I guess the main objection was, and there's a letter to this effect in the Voices page this week from Paul Normando, saying that all the towns are going to get stuck with the Vernon share of the debt on the High School Career Center project. The project that had the dubious distinction of being the most expensive school construction project ever in the state of Vermont.
Right.
And that apparently is going to be a wash, because of Vernon would surrender all of its assets to the BUHS district,
right,
to all the other towns, and it supposedly comes to zero. And then, of course, the matter of that now Vernon would be tuitioning all of its students to BAMS and BUHS and the Career Center. Yeah,
or 80% of them at least would probably still be going there, and no reason to think that those trends won't continue. So people who are opposed to Vernon leaving, like you mentioned, that letter from Mr. Normando, that they're really maybe not necessarily believing this idea that the costs are a wash. I mean, that has been the line coming from the Act 46 Study Committee. It seems to me they've done enough due diligence looking at those numbers with financial analysts, with attorneys, to feel pretty good about saying that. I would think that if it was going to cost the other taxpayers more, they would say that publicly. They wouldn't try to conceal that.
Well, it's more of a case of just the opposition to the whole idea of merging the district, not so much that this is one issue that they've seized upon, but there's a group that really opposed to the idea of having one board for all the towns in the district.
Right. Yeah.
And the whole idea of local control, the two magic words that have derailed any kind of school reform in the state.
Yet we see in other parts of the state, and this is another story that Mike had in this week's edition of the Commons, talking to Stephen Morse, who had made comments how Act 46 is working quite well, thank you, in other parts of Vermont. And for some reason here in southern Vermont, we think we're different. I guess it's mostly topographical, right, in terms of like because there's a mountain here or something that people have to travel to across to get to one school or to one school board meeting, because none of this is talking about closing schools. People are really thinking that it's especially difficult here in the southeastern part of the state to do this district unification, that other parts of the state are like, fine, we're going to do it, and we're going to be just fine. In fact, we're going to be the better for it.
Yeah, it's the difference between unifying governance and unifying schools. Yeah. And I guess maybe the fear is the slippery slope that once we have one big board, the big board, which will be dominated by the big bad Brattleboro, will make decisions that'll close down Dummerston and Putney schools or Guilford School.
Yeah. But that, I mean, to me, that's kind of like a false equivalency when you look at the trends right now in student population, and you look at communities like the Deerfield Valley or Guilford or Brookline and Newfane. They've all closed schools in recent history, and probably more schools going to close regardless of. In fact, one could maybe argue that with Act 46, schools are less likely to close in different parts because they will be looking at things and how they can deliver education to these smaller populations. I just don't believe that this necessarily means schools are going to close when schools were probably going to close anyway when you just read the tea leaves.
Well, when you think of how much money it costs to hire principals and superintendents,
yeah,
how much time the superintendent spends attending every little school board
right.
meeting, and how much time is spent recruiting for the principals and superintendents as they cycle through the system. One person to run the district, one person, one principal to run the schools sounds a little more efficient, I think.
I would think so as well. When you look at how many different school boards we have, how many different superintendents we have, how many districts we have for a state with a population of 500,000, a small fraction of which actually attends elementary school, right?
Well, there's more school districts in Vermont than there are towns.
Yeah, that should be a sign that something needs to change. And I'm not advocating that Act 46 is perfect. I believe people who have looked into this when they say there are problems, but it seems to me that it's a step in a direction that maybe is good at least to get people to look at these things. That's certainly how David Zuckerman put it to me when he was campaigning down here for lieutenant governor. He's like, listen, we've got a good conversation started here, and that was really the goal of Act 46. So the next step, the vote next Tuesday for the town of Vernon, and then I guess the select board, the town meetings in March is really the next milestone. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah, so we'll see how that goes. Another story in the Commons this week with your byline, Randy, checking out the AIDS Project of Southern Vermont holding the World AIDS Day Vigil. And it just, we think about a lot of the different organizations in our community who do a lot of good, and probably because the AIDS epidemic here in our community and here in the United States is not an epidemic quite on the levels it was in the 80s and the 90s. It still is a problem elsewhere. Still need to be vigilant, but it's always nice to see these anniversaries by organizations with good news that they certainly seem to have done a lot of good. I'm talking about the AIDS Project of Southern Vermont in helping people with HIV and AIDS in our community. They
have, and but we've lived through the plague years of the 80s and 90s, and tangentially up here we saw a little up here in Vermont. But if you were in the cities. December 1st, they dedicated the New York City AIDS Memorial down near St. Vincent's Hospital in New York, where most of the first wave of people with AIDS landed, and they estimate 100,000 people, at least 100,000 people in New York died.
Yeah,
and people who lived through that are still bearing the scars of that horrible time. And now, thanks to prevention, treatment, research, there's less of it now, and it's less of it's a manageable condition now. And getting to zero doesn't seem impossible anymore. It could happen within the next decade.
Yeah, that would be a magnificent triumph for the cause and for the people involved. And yeah, you talk about remembering that time when we didn't have a lot of answers about what was causing it, a lot of myths out there about how people got HIV and AIDS. And I can remember being in college at the time and really working. I was working at a Ben & Jerry's, and one of my coworkers there just seemed glum. Hey, what's the problem? And, one of my good friends just came back from the doctor, was diagnosed with HIV AIDS. And, it just felt like at the time that he was going to lose this friend. That is not necessarily the case, fast forwarding now from 1991 to 2016. And that's a really great thing.
It is. And that people, the film that they showed in Counting brought that home of an interview with one person who was frankly astounded that he's actually alive because, he contracted HIV during the time when it was a virtual death sentence.
Yeah.
But he was lucky enough to be in the first wave of the drug treatments, and he's still alive now.
Yeah, good story.
And astonished by it. How do you adjust when you think you're going to die, and you plan your life that you're going to die now or very soon, and suddenly you don't die.
Yeah,
and you keep living and living and living some more.
Should be the goal, right?
Should be.
Great story by you on the bottom of the fold of the front section of the Commons this week on the AIDS Project of Southern Vermont, commemorating World AIDS Day with a vigil. Also a great story by you on the sports page this week about Magic Mountain under new ownership. And I agree with, what is the owner's name, the new owner's name of the mountain? I got to grab the paper here and look it up. Jeff Hathaway.
Yes.
Doing ski magic. I agree with him. There was something about being a young person here. Haystack and Magic Mountain were just two great mountains to go ski. And so people keep trying to keep Magic Mountain alive. Hopefully they're going to do it. Any reason when you talk to them to think they're going to have a better chance than other ownership groups?
Well, I didn't talk to them. The Boston Globe did. That's where I saw the story, and others have talked with them. But I think it's just a case of being able to muster up enough investors to do that and enough marketing. He does have marketing experience. He did work at the mountain previously, but also just brings a personal love of it. And the smaller resorts kind of don't exist anymore in Vermont, you know. No. And if you really don't like the ski experience at the big mega resorts like Killington or Mount Snow or even Okemo, and you want something that's a little more, you know, like a little more traditional and smaller scale. I mean, you either run like a, you know, try to preserve it in amber like Mad River Glen has, you know, with no snowmaking, one chairlift, and, you know, ski it if you got the guts to do it.
Right.
Or you kind of find the happy medium, which Magic is doing, which is, you know, to have a nice small area that's, you know, big enough to give you a challenge, but not so big that you feel like you're overwhelmed.
Yeah. Well, and Tim Boyd, when Peak Resorts bought Mount Snow and I was communications manager there, he just put it so well, and it hadn't occurred to me before, but he talked about those mountains being so important to foster a love of the winter sport. He didn't look at a mountain like Magic or Maple Valley as a competitor. They were a feeder, right? Somebody grows up loving skiing, can do it more affordably at some of these small mountains, and then they say, hey, yeah, I want to attack Mount Snow or Stratton or something like that. It is an economic driver for the entire industry to have a mountain like Magic.
And a big factor why the ski industry is struggling right now, because there is none of those feeder mountains anymore. The closest thing we have to it now is our friends at Living Memorial Park, and Living Memorial Park Snow Sports operating the ski lift there, so you can still learn how to ski and go for a day's worth of up and down that hill for $5.
Yeah, and they've benefited from some of that largesse, you know, getting snowmaking technology and help from a big mountain like Mount Snow that recognizes that. That's a great story. Hopefully Magic Mountain will be able to turn it around, stay open, and provide people with a lot of great skiing. Always a great conversation with you on a Friday, Randy. I know by next week the high school sports season will be underway, so we'll have lots to talk about there as well as other stories. Hope you have a good weekend.
Okay, you too.
All right. That was Randy Holhut, Deputy Editor of the Commons. Reader-supported, independent news and views source for Windham County. Free on stands every Wednesday online at commonsnews.org. We'll be back to wrap up this edition of Green Mountain Mornings right after these messages.